Hello everyone, welcome back to the online Warhammer preview, and welcome to Andy Smiley, the man marshalling the Warhammer Storyforge. Hi Andy.
Hey Wade, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Very excited to be part of this wonderful Warhammer preview.
It's certainly exciting, and what a great hobby room you've got.
Well, thank you very much. This will probably get commented on by most of the guests that crop up. But yeah, welcome to my attic. I thought earlier on, this is a Warhammer preview. I shouldn't be here. This feels peculiar, but I'm in my attic. I've probably got every right to be here, as has everybody who has got current sight of it. You're very welcome. So what can you tell us about what we just saw there, Mr. Andy Smiley?
So that's the first episode from an anthology series that we put together called Hammer and Bolter. So in it, we have a couple of assassins and a couple of inquisitors, and some hijinks ensue.
It looked like, yeah, some shady characters, some disreputable-looking characters.
Yeah, I'm not sure any of them were particularly good.
No, not like a tale of heroes.
No. Certainly not. Are there many of those in 40k? I mean,
not
generally?
Really. A lot of shades of grey. Yeah, it was nice to see splashes of colour in what could otherwise have been a lot of shades of grey. Very different in style to what we've already seen from the Warhammer Storyforge so far, and that we've seen the Angels of Death trailer. How did you settle upon this kind of animation style for Death's Hand?
I think it was always our intent to try and get a range of different animation styles. Some work better than others for different subject matters. And actually, when we were looking at a bunch of people to work with, Sun and Moon, who are the company that have done the animation for us, they sent us a great pitch where they'd taken some Black Library audio dramas and animated segments from it. Turns out they were huge 40k fans and really excited to work on something with us. And actually, that went a long way. You know, having some partners that are just as into the setting as we are and just as enthusiastic about it. So it's been great working with them.
Fantastic. Recently we saw Warhammer Storyforge has got its own dedicated Instagram page, so people can follow all the news there. But for anyone who's missed it, what is Warhammer Storyforge?
Ostensibly, it's a group of writers and creatives we've put together to work on animations from the worlds of Warhammer. It's got a core group, myself, John French, and a few others, and then we sort of flex writers and experts in and out depending on the subject matter. So Aaron Dembski-Bowden's done a script for us, Nick Kime, George Mann, Chris Raitt from Black Library. We got, there's a kind of a good group there, and some of the creators from the main Warhammer studio itself. So.
Wow, that's a very exciting prospect altogether. So this is, new times. These aren't things that we've really explored before in terms of Warhammer IP. So to get that cross-section of different, geniuses who know all they know about the 41st millennium or the mortal realms, and then to pair that with talented people outside in the real world to make that happen. That's very exciting together.
Any hobbyist has been desperate for some full-length animation and media stuff for a long time. So we're all really excited about it, and just want to make sure that we've got the right people to make it great. That's the
Great stuff. And I'd imagine, having seen those different styles now with the Angels of Death trailer and then what we just saw from Hammer and Bolter, I imagine that's not just going to be two styles. That suggests that we might be expecting other varying styles to come in the future, things that we might not really expect or have seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. We might even have some more in these follow-up previews coming to show people.
Oh, really? That's a very exciting thing to drop.
Yes, we got a range of story types, writers, and animation styles, just to try and have a broad brush.
That notion of animators taking existing Black Library stories and turning them around. We often talk to people about how can they start being an heavy metal painter or a miniatures designer, and copying what's already out there is always the best advice to give. So seeing that that's pretty much how other animation companies go about doing their thing as well, to show what the Black Library would look like if brought to life. Very exciting. Now, you're a Black Library author of small renown, your own good self. So have you been involved in penning some of these stories?
The Storyforge stories? Yes. Some of Angels of Death, and also this episode of Hammer and Bolter here, the Death's Hand. So.
Fantastic. And is this a new territory for you? Have you been involved in writing have you written scripts in that fashion before, or have you just been writing prose in the main?
Scripts for Black Library audio dramas is my last experience with scripts. So I think most of the Storyforge actually were quite new to writing TV scripts, as it were. We found we'd done some tests with some people who had written scripts, and it was hard to find people who really understood Warhammer 40,000, just how in dark and grey it was. So we opted to have guys that we knew that really understood the IP and who were good writers that we could, all learn together. And it's not hugely different from writing an audio drama. You're thinking about the medium and dialogue delivering the bulk of it. But whereas in an audio drama, you're thinking about playing with what can people hear, what can I leave to the sound designer to put in. And this you're thinking about, we need to have a cool visual. So all those, when you write a novel, for me personally, the sort of dull bit is when you have to explain the scene. So what, rather than what the characters are up to or how they're feeling or the motivations. And I think with animation, you don't really have to do it. You get to write a couple of, and then you get some great animators who put their creative bent on it, which is great.
Mm-hmm. And as the Warhammer hobby's growing and growing into all of these different media, I know we've talked to miniatures designers who have to understand how their models would articulate so that when people make video games, they know what they look like in action. I guess we're going to be talking to more of the designers about the noises these things make and how they would actually move in ways that miniatures designers maybe have never really had to think before. But now that we're seeing these things, hearing these things moving around more and more, that's going to be part of the design process, I'd imagine, going forwards.
Yeah, and Jez Goodwin has been, we've got a few things in the works he's been really heavily involved with, making sure that we get the movement of Space Marines just right. And a lot of the other guys that, work in that miniature studio have really been lending us their expertise and thoughts. And I think it's posed some interesting questions to them about how that miniature would actually function if they were wandering around.
Yeah. I'm sure Jez Goodwin's already thought all of that through. He's probably got all the points of articulation and movement in a number of sketchbooks.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that resource to be able to fall back on, because this isn't the first time many of these people will be thinking. I imagine most of the designers will be waiting to be asked what sorts of noises these things should make.
It certainly makes our life easier because we do, as you said, they have a wealth of resource we can tap into.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Well, that's very exciting altogether. We look forward to seeing more from the Warhammer Story Forge, and definitely check out the official page on Instagram if you want to follow all of the good details. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Smiley. We look forward to seeing more from the Warhammer Story Forge, and we'll take a little break and we'll get ready for the next preview. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Oh, death nearly claimed you, brother. But I managed to preserve you. I only hoped for long enough. Now, brace yourself. This is going to hurt. A lot. Even in death, I will see you serve.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Warhammer Preview Online, and a very warm welcome to Stu Black from the Warhammer Studio. Hi Stu.
Hi Wade, how you doing?
I am a little bit more unsettled now, having just seen that video again than I was previously. What can you tell us about what we've just seen?
So it was quite freaky, wasn't it? That is Fabius Bile, the Clone Lord, the Primogenitor. He's not a nice guy.
No.
As Andy said earlier, Andy Smiley earlier was talking about there's no real good guys in 40k. I think Fabius Bile's definitely on the bad boy list.
Yes. Yeah. He's got, ambitions. He's got a plan. He's trying to do his own thing, but he's a complicated character altogether, really, isn't he? He's one of those original chaos characters that some of the more venerable hobbyists may have known about for a good couple of decades. How would you describe what he is for anyone who's unfamiliar with his works?
He is definitely evil. So I think one word. So he is a former apothecary of the Emperor's Children Legion. He was there during the Siege of Terror. He's actually responsible for a lot of what the Emperor's Children became. So he carried out a lot of the early kind of surgical experimentation on them. He's the guy who kind of pioneered their rewiring of their nervous systems so that their pleasure centers are kind of overloaded all the time. And he's slightly obsessed with cloning things. So the Fabius Bile himself has had multiple clones over the last 10,000 years. You tend to wear bodies out quite quickly, I imagine, in the Eye of Terror. he's the Clone Lord, and he is kind of obsessed with the creation of a new man, of making, of basically bettering what the Emperor did and making even better men. Better is inverted commas. I think he's got his own definition of what better looks like.
To a given standard of improvement.
Yeah, I think anyone who has spent time with the homunculi of Komorra as a way of kind of learning some more experimental techniques probably got a bit of a twisted view on things. Not a nice fellow.
So the presumable battle brother from whose perspective we just saw that video, he might be about to contribute to Fabius Bile's great work. Yeah,
I'm sure that he will have an interesting new life. So Fabius Bile, over the years, we've seen at the end of the Horus Heresy, when the traitor legions flee into the Eye of Terror, Fabius Bile kind of uses his knowledge of Astartes' kind of physiology to bargain himself into a position of power. So in the Eye of Terror, the kind of other traitor legions really use his knowledge and his wisdom to create new Chaos Marines. So unlike the Loyalist chapters, where you have a nice, neat, clean apothecarian somewhere with a gene seed store, a lot of the traitor legions end up kind of harvesting gene seed from wherever they can find it and effectively creating kind of mongrel Chaos Marines with gene seed from wherever they can find it. It's their only way to survive. And Fabius Bile has used that kind of knowledge to kind of build an empire for himself. He has made his lair on a crone world deep in the Eye of Terror, so former Eldar world, like the heart of the Eye of Terror. So yeah, really interesting guy, kind of quite complicated, like you say. Him and his dad don't get on, so he has turned his back on Fulgrim, and the rest of the Emperor's children. Really, he's definitely his own man.
Is from that original tranche of the Codex Chaos book from mid-90s, that original group of characters that we've now seen returned in plastic form. So there's Khan the Betrayer, who broke up the World Eaters. There was Araman, who turned all of the Thousand Sons to dust. And Fabius Bile, who, before Lucius the Eternal was ever a feature, he was the Emperor's Children Marine who left the Emperor's Children. He was a renegade, even from his own legion.
Yes, yeah, and that's still very much true. And I think it's quite, if you look at the miniature, it's got, it's clearly inspired by that Mark Gibbons piece that was in that book that you allude to, the first ever Chaos Space Marine Codex with a Baden on the front. Possibly one of the brightest front covers of a Games Workshop publication.
Yeah.
I think
with a mushroom cloud.
Yeah, I think Dave Gallagher managed to use all the crayons, I think, on that, like all the colours. It was very much kind of my foundational time with the hobby, with that era. So it's great to see such a kind of faithful reproduction of Jez's original miniature and Mark's artwork. And there's lots of kind of little nods to both of those. The first time I saw the miniature, I was like, oh, that's how I remember it looking. And it's only really when you look at like the very venerable Jez Goodwin model from kind of 5 years ago, makes me feel old. Maybe it hasn't aged as well as it has in my memory. And this plastic miniature is just a fabulous kind of expression of that.
And he's in fine company now as well. The new version comes with it. What can you tell us about that chap?
So that's one of his surgeon acolytes. I'm not sure that's a great job.
No.
I think, but definitely he's part of Fabius Bile's kind of retinue. You can see in the miniature there, he's actually harvesting the progenoid organs from a Primarch Space Marine.
Yeah.
And obviously, with the kind of unleashing of the Primaris Marines into the 40k galaxy, Fabius Bile was quite keen to get hold of their genetic code and the gene seed to see what new wonders he can forge from it. He's a bit less fussy than everybody else, so it'd be interesting to see what he makes of it.
Indeed, and will we find out some of this in a Psychic Awakening tome in the future?
Yes, we definitely will. So he appears in a book called War of the Spider. He's it's even named after him. One of his kind of nicknames is the Spider, because he's just such a devious guy. There's always kind of networks of betrayal and plans within plans going on for Fabius Bile. So yes, he appears in War of the Spider, an upcoming Psychic Awakening book, along with some other factions.
Ooh. Can you let us know what other factions those will be?
I can, yeah. So Fabius Bile, bless him, doesn't really make friends with anybody. So there's a kind of three-way war between a torchbearer fleet led by the Adeptus Custodes, the Death Guard, and then Fabius Bile and his forces. He allies with a renegade Space Marine chapter, and who are being hunted by the torchbearer fleet that was originally sent to bring them the Primaris kind of reinforcements. So yeah, it's a really good kind of three-way fight between those. And it also, because he is such a threat, there's also assassins have been sent. Imperial assassins have been deployed to kind of hunt the spider to his lair and end him for all time.
Great stuff. We'll look out for more details on that in the future. Well, Stu, thank you very much for joining us and sharing these wonderful details about the upcoming Fabius Bile, and we'll look out for more stuff in the future. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Wade.
What do you look for in a Primarch? Indomitable strength? Unbridled ferocity? Stoic resolve? Angelic features? Or maybe you'd rather not have to choose. This is not just any Primarch. This is the first Primarch. This is the lion.
Welcome back to the Warhammer Preview Online, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Mr. Andy Hoare. How are you doing, Andy?
Hello, Wade. How are you?
I am grand, thank you. Very excited to see the reveal of the lion.
Isn't it amazing?
It is indeed amazing. You must
in fact, don't all of the Primarchs look quite incredible in that video?
They do, yeah. It's
Absolutely.
a nice little run through of some of the other fine characters from that period of time. But to deal with the first Primarch, that's quite a heavy thing altogether, isn't it?
It really is, actually, because I think the lion was always going to be one of the last ones that we made. But at the same time, he's the Primarch of the First Legion, so that there's so much riding on him. And it was done by Sam Egan, who is the designer who's made almost all of the Primarchs for us. And I think he's just done an amazing job. He takes his time, he gets it right. He sculpts them physically using modelling putty, using green stuff. And it's just a stunningly detailed model. I think he's captured absolutely everything about the line from what we know from all the novels, all the stories that have been with us since early 90s, probably.
Yeah. And does Sam work from sketches or mock-ups? Does he just have at it and come out with these wonderful sculptures? What's his process?
Yeah,
We're going to pin him down for a podcast.
Yeah, you should talk to him, actually. Yeah, he has a really involved concepting stage. But the first thing we always do with all of the Primarchs is gather together what artwork we've got of them, which is normally a deep dive into some of the Black Library novels, because quite often there's some really nice little illustrations in there. We look at the Collected Visions book with all the artwork that was done for the old collectible miniature card game from Sabretooth.
Indeed.
Yeah, we do that. We look at some of those absolutely iconic Black Library novel covers. There's some amazing material in there. We get all of those things together, and then we sit down and we think, what's the objectives here? What are we trying to capture? What's the archetype of this character? Which is always a really interesting thing, particularly with Primarchs, because they all have an underlying archetype that you're trying to capture. And then Sam works on mock-ups, which could take several months, potentially, just to get the mock-up right, to get the posing correct, all those little ideas of details. And then finally, when he's ready to go, we let him loose, and it takes as long as it takes. And he comes back with these most amazing works of art.
So I guess the silhouette, the posing, everything about it has to scream the character of that Primarch and his legion, even from a distance. So it must be an awful lot of work to make sure there's no accident, but not anything that might run the risk of overlapping or taking the archetype of one Primarch and maybe it has to be absolutely crystal clear which one it is.
That's
the image.
Yeah, I mean, one of the
we should talk about.
So one of the things that happened with the Primarchs a long time ago, actually, which was when Alan Bligh and John French were first working on putting the foundations of the Horus Heresy game that Forge World went on to make, they set out to do a matrix that describes what all of the different Primarchs are. What are their keywords? What qualities do they embody? What do they do? And this is something that we go back to when we're writing the rules and the background, but also making the models themselves. So I've got a little list of some of those words that appear in the matrix here. So resolve. So he's full of resolution. He's very he radiates strength and resolve. Virtue. So he's got that sort of knightly quality going on there. But it's a sort of it's quite a dark knight, isn't it? It's not like a sort of knight in shining armor. There's a dark side to him.
Yep.
Ruthless. So yeah, he very famously does what needs to be done, and sometimes that even involves punishing his own sons within his own legion. There's quite a famous scene in one of the Black Library books where the lion takes out his wrath on one of his own guys. But he's also efficient. Very tactical and strategic, a good balance of those two things. Valorous, and one of the interesting ones, which really comes out across from his background as well, is he's a monster hunter. In some ways, that's what this guy does. Now, his background we've known since the old Angels of Death book, way back in the early 90s. He is the guy that hunts down all of the monsters on Caliban and slays them. He's that type of knight. He's that knight errant that goes off, hunts down the big mythological horror, slays it, in the name of all that's good. And he does that during the heresy as well. It's very much his role. And so that was one of the things that we were trying to bring out in him.
Yeah. And he's got a lovely scenic base, as we've come to expect from the Primarch's range. What can you tell us about what's going on there at his feet?
Well, it's very much all about the Thramas Crusade. So if people have read most of the Dark Angels material that comes through the Black Library novels, most of it that's been published happens either just before or just after, actually, the Thramas Crusade, which was, I think, a 2-year-long campaign where essentially the War Master contrived to get the Dark Angels out of the picture so that when his treachery was revealed at Isfahan, the Dark Angels would be completely off on the wrong side of the galaxy. They were on the Eastern Fringe, and it was the Night Lords that were tasked with distracting them, basically. So going out into the Eastern Fringes and just committing all sorts of sort of horrendous acts across the entire Eastern Fringe in order to sort of draw the Dark Angels away. Because one of the things about the Dark Angels in particular, the Lion, is this idea of virtuousness, punishing the criminals, essentially. So the Lion allowed himself almost to be drawn off to fight the Night Lords, and that's very much what you're seeing here going on in this base. He is absolutely laying the Emperor's judgment down on some Night Lords who were asking for it.
They've probably asked for it for a little while. And we've seen a couple of different combinations of ways to put that together. Can you let us know what will come in the kit?
Yes, so you get that entire thing plus 2 extra bits. One is the bear head that we saw in the little preview video earlier on, and this is the first model where we've done a bear head and a helmet head on a Primarch, because it just works so well for him. We know what he looks like under his helmet. We know he's this sort of craggy, square-jawed, blonde beard, long blonde hair. We know what he looks like. We've known that for a while. But to really play up the knight side of him, we decided to do the helmeted version as well, if that's the sort of side of him that you want to do. And the other thing that you get 2 of in the kit is the swords. So you can see he's got the chain sword, which is called the Wolf Blade, and his other swords is the more famous Lion Blade. So you can put them together however you want, and they both have their own rules, which you can choose which one you're going to play with. Essentially, the Lion Sword is the blade that you would take for normal circumstances, if you like, going up against other characters, lots of lots of lower level combatants. But the wolf blade, the chainsword one, is very much designed to play up what I was saying about the monster hunter. So its rules give him an extra +3 strength, and he's already got a strength of 7. So he's more. So that is the monster hunter side, and you put them together whichever way you want, and you choose which one you're going to use.
Great stuff. And it should be just reaffirmed for anyone asking, this is definitely the Lionel Johnson of the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness.
Very much so.
Lionel Johnson of the 41st Millennium, still asleep. And there's not a miniature to represent that.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Well, the penultimate Primarch then, because keen eyes, we're just checking in. That's not all of the Primarchs yet realised, but most of the way there. And a great question of what we can expect from the Thramas Crusade and the Dark Angels, the first Legion in the Horus Heresy. Exciting stuff. Well, thank you very much for your time, Andy, and talking us through the design points of the lovely Lionel Johnson Primarch figure.
You're very welcome. It's great to talk to you.
It was great to talk to you too. And we'll be back to round up what we've just been through on the Warhammer previews in a few moments. Bear with us and we'll take you all through it again.